Somebody on Reddit posted that they spent $2,500 in a single day on OpenClaw API fees. 150 million tokens, that is, just in 24 hours. And they didn't even realize it happened until they checked their dashboard. Now, of course, that's an extreme case, but spending $50, $100, even $200 more than you should is actually incredibly common with OpenClaw users, especially in their first few weeks of using the tool. And every single one of those overspends come from the same 5 mistakes. Hey, I'm Sen. In this video, I'm going to break down the 5 most expensive mistakes people make with OpenClaw, with real dollar figures from real users. So by the end of this video, you know exactly what causes surprise API bills, how to configure your setup to avoid them, and how to keep your monthly costs under $20 or $30 instead of hundreds. Okay, so mistake number 1 is not setting up model routing. So this is actually the single most expensive mistake, and it's the most common one. You see, when you first set up OpenClaw, if you don't configure model routing, every single request your agent handles actually gets sent to whatever default model is set. For a lot of people, that default model is actually the most expensive one available, something like Claude Opus or GPT-5. Now, here's the thing, 80 to 90% of what your agent doesn't actually need an expensive model. Renaming a file, summarizing a short email, sending a quick Telegram reply, a cheap model like Haiku, for example, can handle those tasks perfectly fine. And the cost difference is roughly 10 to 20 times cheaper per message. So the way to fix this mistake is setting up smart model routing. You configure your system so cheap, fast models will handle routine tasks, and a mid-tier model will handle general reasoning, and the expensive model only gets called for genuinely complex work like deep analysis, coding, or multi-step research. Now, people who set up routing properly report spending around $10 to $30 a month, and it's these people who don't routinely hit $100 to $300 for the exact same usage patterns, with the same tasks, the same agents. The only difference here is which model processes all of the tasks. Okay, now for mistake number 2. You don't set any spending limits on your API provider. So OpenClaw itself doesn't actually have a built-in monthly spending cap right now, which means if something goes wrong, an agent loops, a skill misfires, or a task runs overnight, there's nothing inside OpenClaw that stops the bleeding. Your safety net has to come from the API provider side, which is OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google. Now, they all let you set usage limits and billing alerts on their dashboards. So if you don't set those, you're actually running with no breaks. And in the beginning, the $2,500 horror story, well, that person didn't have any limits set anywhere. So their agent actually hit a loop, kept retrying, and just burned through their tokens for hours on end. So make sure to set a hard monthly limit on every API provider you connect. In fact, set a daily alert threshold as well. If you normally spend 50 cents a day and suddenly you're at $5 before noon, then you immediately know that something is wrong. So you want to catch that immediately. Okay, so for mistake number 3, this is something called agent loops. And honestly, this is probably the scariest one because it happens silently. An agent loop is when your AI agent tries to do something, it fails or gets an ambiguous response, and instead of stopping, it just retries again and again and again. And each retry burns tokens. A loop running for a few hours on an expensive model can easily rack up $50 to $200 or even more. And loops usually happen when an external service returns an error or unexpected output. So your agent doesn't know it failed, and it just keeps trying the same thing over and over, each time sending a full context window to the AI model. Now, the prevention for this mistake is configuring something called timeout limits and maximum retry counts. You want to set a cap on how many times an agent can attempt the same action. So you want to add watchdog monitoring that alerts you when an agent's token usage spikes, and when you're testing new skills or workflows, you need to watch the logs in real time for the first few runs. Okay, now for mistake number 4, this is running too many agents too soon. And OpenClaw, the beauty of it is that it makes it easy to spin up agents, and that's super exciting. So a lot of people and users will end up creating 5, 10, sometimes 14 agents in their first few days. And if you look online, there's a couple of review videos that document this exactly. They will have 14 agents built and made in 3 days, roughly costing them $200 spent on each one. And each agent is making API calls independently. Each one might be running heartbeat checks, background monitoring, or scheduled tasks. And these costs, because of their quantity, it will multiply very, very fast. So you want to start with just one agent. Get it working reliably, understand exactly how much it costs per day, then add a second, monitor the cost impact, and then scale slowly and deliberately instead of going from 0 to 14 or more agents overnight. And then for mistake number 5 is not using free local models for simple tasks. Now, OpenClaw supports local models through a Llama. For example, there's Llama, Mistral, Gemma, and others. And these run on your server and cost exactly 0 in API fees. However, I do have to admit the quality trade-off is real because local models are noticeably worse than Claude Opus or GPT-5 for any complex reasoning and coding tasks. But honestly, if you have any simple tasks like drafting short replies, summarizing emails, renaming files, any kind of basic search, honestly, these free models are perfectly adequate. And the smart approach is what people call tiered routing. This is where a local free model will handle 60 to 70% of routine tasks, and a cheap paid model will handle 20% of medium tasks. And then finally, the expensive model only gets called for the 10% of tasks that genuinely needs it. And a lot of users who run this tiered approach with OpenClaw actually keep their API bills under $10 to $20 a month. However, people who are running everything through a premium model will spend 5 to 10 times that amount. Now, running local models does mean you need a powerful server, and that's exactly where your VPS choice matters. In fact, Hostinger has VPS plans with enough RAM and CPU to handle a Llama alongside OpenClaw, and it has up to 67% off right now, so we've linked it in the description down below. Okay, so now let me summarize the cost optimization. So if I put this all together, a well-optimized OpenClaw setup with smart routing, spending limits, loop protection, and local models for routine tasks honestly should cost you roughly $15 to $30 a month total, including hosting. However, the exact same usage without any optimization easily costs $100 to $300 a month. In fact, some people might even end up spending more. And the difference isn't in how much you use OpenClaw, it's in how you configure it. And if after hearing all of this, you're thinking this sounds like a lot of configuration work just to keep costs down, that's a valid reaction. If you want AI agents without the DevOps overhead, you can actually use tools like Lindy AI, which actually lets you build automations with no code and no server management. Now, the trade-off here is that you have less control, but also less risk of waking up to surprise a bill. And we've got another link in the description to that as well. Okay, so that's all 5 mistakes that turn a $20 AI assistant into a $200 money pit. There's no model routing, no spending limits, agent loops, too many agents too fast being set up, and not using free models for simple tasks. Now, if you fix all 5 of these mistakes, your OpenClaw will become genuinely a lot more affordable. However, if you miss even one, it can get quite expensive really quickly. Now, if you want to see how to actually set up OpenClaw from scratch, I've actually made a full beginner's tutorial, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you use our links below, we do get a small referral fee at no extra cost to you, and honestly, it helps us keep creating free videos exactly like this one for you guys. So if you do use our links, thanks a lot in advance. I'm Sen from AI Academy. If this video helped, make sure to like and subscribe and check out this video.